the last series we talked about was kind of integrating testing into your development flow. And I wrapped up that one by talking about my framework with the two pieces, one about the testing side of the framework and the other side being the actual Java framework piece using the different test frameworks like Pojo or page object models, things like that. This one, we're moving away from that just slightly, and this may become a new series if you guys like it. Let me know, and I can kind of put something else together. But a lot of problems people have, even with frameworks or with automated testing in general, is actually how do we actually go and interact with our web pages? And since Selenium is pretty much the forefront for almost all web page interactions and automated testing, I decided to do a presentation today on essentially how do we interact with the web pages. So how do we use the Selenium WebDriver to actually test our code, to actually work with the web page? So this is going to be kind of a high level. I'm not going to get down into the weeds. It's just setting up the binaries, configuring your project. We're actually just going to be kind of jumping right into it. I'll highlight some of the components to actually use the components of the WebDriver to get started. But we're going to focus primarily on looking at the web pages themselves, how to identify the individual page elements that we want to use for testing, and then how we actually use those with the WebDriver. So with that, that's pretty much it for the slide, because it's going to be pretty much all hands-on. So if you want to learn more about Selenium and actually kind of do the how-tos and everything, if you go to selenium.dev, this is their professional, or I guess their main page for everything Selenium. And there's three flavors to Selenium. You got the Selenium IDE, which is a record playback tool you can use for Chrome and Firefox, which is good if you're just testing interactively and want to make sure that something works on a page. Not really good for long-term automation or testing. This is just kind of one and done recording tool. For frameworks or more long-term automation, you want to do things with the Selenium WebDriver. Now, if you have more of an enterprise environment and you're wanting to do more load testing or more browser OS testing, you will want to look at the Selenium Grid. Now, I've done a presentation on the grid in the past using Kubernetes and Docker. So if you want, you may want to go back and revisit that if you want to learn more about the grid. Today, we're going to primarily just focus on using the WebDriver. So if you've never used WebDriver, you can get it from here. However, I'm going to show you, I live in the Java world these days, but I'll show you how to get all this using Maven, so you don't even have to come out to the dev page to get your binaries at all. Another useful point, though, on their site, though, is their documentations page. This is a great how-to to get started with the Selenium and the Selenium WebDriver. So basically, you come down here, getting started with Selenium WebDriver. It gives you kind of a quick overview, some how-tos, and then primarily the WebDriver is the driving factor of everything that you're going to be doing. So here we want the Selenium API. All right, so in the Selenium API, this is pretty cool. They've updated all their Java docs essentially to be the new look and feel for documentation, which is really nice and easy to read. A little tricky to navigate through initially, but once you get the hang of it, it's not that bad. The main classes we're going to be concerned about today are going to be the by, WebDriver, and web element. So these are going to be the three things you have to get familiar with Selenium in order to, one, create your tests, two, interact with the web browser, and three, locate your web elements on the page and actually interact with the web elements. So the WebDriver is the primary class that you're going to need. And as the class name pretty much clarifies, it's a web driver. It drives the interaction between your test and the browser that you're going to use. Now, as you can see here, it supports Chrome, Edge, Firefox, IE, and Safari. They used to support Phantom.js and Ghost.js, but that has since been discontinued since now, since Edge is a build on Chromium. So Chrome, Edge, Firefox are all pretty much built on the Chromium or the Gecko initial browser, open source browsers. So those browsers all have the capability of running headless. So you no longer need the support for the headless browsers out there like HTML Unit, Ghost Driver, or Phantom.js Driver. So these are the browsers, drivers that are supported. And I recommend pretty much looking at Chrome and Firefox. Those are pretty much the two most easy to use. Edge is also now becoming very easy to use because it's actually a very lightweight form of Chrome, because Microsoft is pushing fast, streamless browsing without all the bells and whistles that Chrome has that slows down the browser. So that's something to look at. All right, so we have WebDriver. To actually find our web elements, we're going to need to use the by class. This is going to be how we look up those locators. And by looking up the locators, we have a couple of different methods here that we use to actually find our locators. And we can find them using the CSS class names. We can find them using CSS selectors. We can find them by their individual element ID. We can look it up by JavaScript. We can look it up by link text. We can also look it up by the element and attribute name. We can also look up by partial link text. You can also pull by tag name, but as you can see, that's being deprecated because really it's not that useful. It can get very bloated, so this is going to be going away in the near future. Or you can use the very friendly regedit XPath to do a more complex lookup of your elements. And we're going to actually look at an example of using each of these today. And then finally, once you have your locator, once you locate it, it's going to return a web element class. And this is essentially the class you use to interact with the web element that you pull in. So this could be your form input fields, your labels, your links, and so on. So we will jump out and get right into the code. That. So first, we're going to create a class here. Created a very simple class called using locators. This is a Maven project. So I basically just created a basic Maven archetype project. So I would have my main Java, source main Java and source test Java. Just to kind of show you how WebDriver works, I'm not going to include any JUnit or TestNG components to this example today. We're just going to use a straight Java class, just so you can see how the actual Selenium classes work. And then we need to configure our POM file to get a couple of things. So we need to get the org.selenium, hq.selenium Maven dependency to get our Selenium Java classes. All right, so our Maven dependencies, it's going to pull in all these Selenium classes or Selenium jar files here. Now, these Selenium jars here, the Selenium -Java, Selenium-API, are the primary ones that you get if you were to download Selenium from the Selenium site. So these are the main binaries. There are some additional support binaries. You get support, remote driver, you'll need those as well. These other ones here, the Selenium Chrome driver, Edge, Firefox, and IE driver, come from the IO GitHub Bonnie Garcia. Now, the Webdriver Manager library here that this guy incorporates, that pulls in, this guy here, every time you start your test or you start your program, if you use the Webdriver Manager, it's going to automatically pull down the latest Chrome driver that is required for interacting with the browsers. So you no longer have to go out and manage your binaries anymore for your browsers. This is a huge time saver when dealing with Selenium or any type of automation testing. Okay, so let's go back over to our class. So we have a simple main method here. Now, just to make sure that things go smoothly today, we're going to just start out with a try-catch block here, because sometimes WebDriver will crash. You accidentally close your browser closes unsuspectedly. So we kind of want to catch that. So we'll just do a simple try-catch around the whole project here. Just do a simple exception. And we're just not going to do anything with it. Yeah. All right, so we're going to do the bulk of our testing in here. Now, the first thing we need to do is we need to get our WebDriver start out by actually instantiating our WebDriver. So to do that, we need these two lines of code here. So the first one, Webdriver Manager, if you don't use Webdriver Manager and you just want to use WebDriver correctly, you're going to have to actually do things like actually set up system set properties. And then you're going to have to actually set the properties for the particular WebDriver that you want to use. So if you want to use Chrome, you have to set up the WebDriver Chrome. And then you have to point it to the actual physical location of the binaries. And this gets tedious because if you want to change your browsers, you got to download the latest binaries, change your code. So I don't recommend doing it this way. Instead, I recommend using the WebDriver Manager class. Import. So we have our Selenium WebDriver, we have our Selenium Chrome driver, and we have the IO GitHub Bonnie Garcia WebDriver Manager. So to use the WebDriver Manager, it's really straightforward, very easy. You can do WebDriver Manager dot, and then you just go pick the browser that you want to use: Firefox, Edge, Chromium, Chrome driver. Believe they simplified it now. So before, they also had Gecko driver, but now Firefox driver encompasses both the Gecko and the Firefox driver. So if you want to use Firefox, you use the Firefox driver. To get rid of all the bloatedness of the set path, you can do a couple different things here. You can set your browser to be 32-bit, 64-bit. This is actually still necessary if you're doing cross-browser testing across older operating systems. You'll want to make sure that you actually set the browser to the correct byte, 32 or 64. And you can also do things like clear cache, set the particular browser path if you actually want to point to your own binary, clear preferences. You can also set preferences, force cache. So you can do a lot of different things here with the particular configuration. But just to get started, if you do your browser driver.setup, you're good to go. It has now configured your runtime for that particular browser driver. And then the next thing you want to do is you call WebDriver, and then you tell it which browser you want to use, which Chrome or which browser driver to instantiate. So you can do Chrome driver, you can do Firefox driver, you could do Safari driver. So basically, all the particular browsers have browser name driver. So once we have our driver, this instantiates our driver. Now, once we have the driver, once we're done with it, we need to make sure we actually clean it up. We need to actually close it. So you want to treat it like an IO or a screen. So we have driver.close, but there is also a driver.quit. Now, the difference between the two of these is one actually closes the browser, but if you're dealing with, say, Firefox or Chrome, where they have like a manager tool behind the scenes, what will essentially happen is, yes, it will close your browser window, but it may not close the actual browser application itself. So to do that, you would need to call driver.quit. Now, for browsers that don't have the management application running behind the scenes, if you call quit, sometimes that will fail, or vice versa. If you call close, close isn't recognized by the browser, but quit is. So these will also have to be wrapped in a try-catch. And this is just quick and dirty, but I just kind of want to show you guys what you need to do just to get started. My framework actually encompasses all this, so it's very clean. All you have to do is just call run test, and it will actually build this, and it will do all the supporting pieces you need to do behind the scenes. But if you just are getting started, it's kind of good to see how things work. All right, so now we have our driver. So what can we do with our driver? So say we want to actually go out and test Walmart. So say we wanted to go and test an actual site. So we need to get our URL. So we'll copy walmart.com. And we'll do driver.get, and we put in our URL. And if I did red sleep, which is not really what you should do for testing or for safeguarding, but we'll just do this way. All right, so we've got thread sleep. It's just going to pause for a few seconds, and we are just going to run this real quick and make sure that walmart.com opens. All right, so we'll close the existing browser so you'll see this working, and we'll just right click and run it. There we go. And as you can see, it put in walmart.com, and we navigate over to Walmart.